Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you, as we're going to be joined in a few minutes by Colby Dant. He does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love over on the College Experience, and he's going to be joining me to talk a little bit about these NBA draft decisions, and we're going to get into a big giant diatribe of coaches that are on the hot seat and teams that are sort of in put up and shut up mode. So that is going to be a lot of fun. Colby, he always is a lot of fun whenever he joins this show. Brings a lot of great energy. We're going to be talking about that and so much more. And then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the weekend. We didn't have a lot of news and notes on Saturday, so we're just doing Saturdays and Sundays together here on this podcast. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, there's the name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While we did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. Over at EdgeBoost, you're able to have all of your gambling transactions approved 100% of the time, as it is set up for bettors to be able to access their funds anytime, anywhere. When you go to edgeboost.bet, utilize that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's chat with our man, Colby, who does a tremendous job over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, and is on Twitter/X at the Colby D. And Colby, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me again. Always a pleasure, Greg. And I love the fact it's June 7th and me and you can talk college basketball. There's not many of us out there. Hopefully there's more in the future. That's what we're doing this for, right?
Oh, absolutely. And when you've got 364 Division I teams, you need to be talking about it all throughout the year, because if you don't right now, you're going to fall behind, and you're going to fall so far behind that you are never going to be able to catch up. And just how has things changed for you over the last few off seasons in terms of how you prepare for the upcoming season? Because I do think that that's so interesting, and it's a big reason why this podcast is all 365, leap year 366 days out of the year up and running, just because there's just so much to decipher and so much to break down.
There is. And I mean, how about we also had the settlement case going forward? You add that on top of, I'm old enough, and I know you are too, I think, to remember a time when like you would create the drama yourself, be like, wow, can Cincinnati finally beat Xavier after 2 years? The offseason now just writes itself. Doesn't matter what sport you're covering, with the transfer portal, with just NCAA rules and stuff. And then obviously I do love the fact that, I forget what year they started doing this, where you can enter the NBA draft, but stay and then come back when you figure out I think the NFL.
Right, like 2017, 2018, something like that.
Yeah, that's such a bonus for the game and such a bonus for the kids, in my opinion. I think the NFL should offer the same thing. They don't, but they need to get it together with that. Or, the NCAA should offer that leeway, because I've seen some players get burned on agents telling them their top, 3-round draft picks. Everyone made fun of Quinn Ewers and Shedeur Sanders this past year, but they should just offer it. I think we're trying to help kids. That's the point of college, right? But then again, I was at a Duke baseball game that one of their best players didn't play because he was wearing the celebration helmet when he left the dugout, and he got suspended for the biggest game of his career for wearing the celebration helmet, almost like the turnover chain in football. So pretty pathetic by the NCAA. But I like to think we're getting better, man. And I can tell you this, I like seeing some of these guys coming back. I think it's a win for college basketball. It'll be interesting to see, some of the guys like Lendenborg going to Michigan. I can't wait to watch that. I can't wait to watch that because he was such a beast at UAB last year.
Yep, and for one, I mean, man, I still remember when you could give a recruit like a bagel, but if you gave them cream cheese or peanut butter, that was a violation. So thank goodness gracious we have passed that. But I'm so glad you mentioned Michigan because I certainly do think that the top team out there in the Big Ten is Purdue. With all that they've got coming back, they didn't have any drama with regards to the NBA draft decisions. They certainly should be a top 3 team going into the upcoming season. But I think that Michigan could be that very clear number 2, and I'm very bullish on this Michigan team in that they also address the fact that they turn the ball over so much with Elliott Cadeau coming in. Even though he's not a great scorer, I think that he's exactly what this team needs to just operate better this year.
Dusty May is one that, obviously had that great Final Four run with Florida Atlantic. But the year after, when they had a little bit more hype, they didn't even reach, they didn't have them. A lot of people had them preseason top 10, 15. They didn't have the same success. They were still a good team, but I was a skeptic. Of when Michigan hired him. I thought, man, everyone wants to hire him. I would like to see a little longer tenure at Florida Atlantic, but he shut me up pretty quick. I was very impressed with the first year at Michigan, and then you add in a year 2 where you can build on that with the hype. If a Michigan fan watched year 1, I think they're just ecstatic about the future. And then what they've done in the portal, what they've done recruiting wise, I am buying in. Now, I don't know that I can put them ahead of Purdue, much like you, especially with Braden Smith and Kaufman Wren and everything. But I do think they're next up. They're next up to me in the preseason ranking, especially with some of the turnover. You got a lot of Big Ten teams with new coaches, but hey, Michigan should be a force in college basketball, and I think they're on the right path.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And for Michigan, bringing back Lendenborg, I thought that was massive, as Colby Dant, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I certainly think that was one of the biggest impact transfers. And let me ask you this, because I think that this is an interesting way of putting it. Which team do you think either gained or lost the most with regards to the decisions that we saw over the last few weeks? And I bring this up as an example. Like, I thought that Mississippi State was going to be terrible if they weren't going to have Josh Hubbard back in the fold. Maybe they're not going to be like some sort of top 10 team or anything like that, but with Josh Hubbard back, I feel like that's a big difference maker for them as compared to where they would have been without him. Who's the team or two that you take a look at that either they won big or they lost big with regards to the decisions over the last few weeks?
Well, what's funny is I'm going to hit you with one that it's kind of like a taboo one, and that is NC State. So this is and I don't know if it's truly answering your question, but Darian Williams, we thought he was going to be potentially coming back to Texas Tech. He goes to NC State after flirting with the NBA draft there for a little bit. Will Wade coming into NC State. And look, I'm an ECU guy. I went to ECU. I love ECU. I hate NC State. But we cover the sport from a national point, and I have to throw my feelings aside. What Will Wade has done at NC State quickly has me thinking, like, I know that I just read an article about North Carolina throwing in a bunch of money to their NIL. I'm sorry, when I look at NC State's roster, I think they're better than North Carolina today. They just got Van Allen Lubin from them. They got Dontrez Styles from them. I am all in on what Will Wade is doing. Unfortunately, it's NC State, which is a rival of ECU's, but I am buying in to what's happening there in Raleigh and getting Darian Williams, where I didn't even know that he was flirting with did you? Because I did not know that he was even considering NC State. The talk I had heard around NC State was Haggerty. And then to end up with Darian Williams, I think is a win-win. I think the people in Raleigh, I think they're contenders next year.
Yep, I'm right there with you in that I thought that it was going to be PJ Haggerty that was going to be going on over there. As we both know, that is not the case. And I think that leads to something interesting as well with Kansas State and the fact that they are the ones that get PJ Haggerty, because with Kansas State, it's really fallen flat for them last 2 off seasons. They bought into some of these guys late in the process. And Haggerty, again, he's a guy that comes over late May, early June. He decides to enter in the program. But how do you take a look at a Kansas State team that year number 1, it was so good under Jerome Tang. Years number 2 and 3, there were high expectations, fell short of them, but now you bring in a guy like a PJ Haggerty, who is one of the better scorers in all of college basketball last year.
It's funny, I just did my Kansas State college football preview. Me and Moneyline Mac were talking about Kansas State college basketball. They spent in the portal last year. They did. They brought in Doug McDaniel. I think he cashed in. And for it to be a dud, I think it was incredibly disappointing. Now this year, you look. They got my guy, by the way. Besides PJ Haggerty, Marcus Johnson, which I know, Greg. I know you've caught this guy at Bowling Green. He reminds me of Big Baby Davis 2.0
with a better 3-point shot.
Yes, he's. If you have not caught Marcus Johnson, he's a little bit overweight, or I don't even want to say he's fat.
He's chunky.
It's just a natural. It's almost like Charles Barkley or something, but. The guy has got a great game, so I did like that, addition. And then they brought in McGriff from Wilmington, which I follow Wilmington's program pretty close, which I think is a good get. But I think it's a make or break year for Jerome Tang. And I mean, didn't they get Bashir too? I think they got Bashir from. Yes. I mean, he was a beast at Monmouth last year. But once again, sometimes you whiff on the step ups. I think a lot of people thought Max Asmus was going to be better at Texas than he was. So it's going to be fascinating to watch, but I do think if Jerome Tang, at first he started out, I feel like as everyone in Manhattan loved him. He said a few things regarding, I thought, the boosters and stuff that I think kind of has him in a little bit of taboo right now, where I think he's got to win this season or they might be looking elsewhere. They did spend, man. I know they weren't one of the top spending, but I think they spent a decent amount where they should have expected an NCAA tournament berth a season ago, and to come up short like that, I think it's a huge year for him. So I do like the additions. How fast can it work? They also I think brought in Nate Johnson. Now that I think about it, from Akron. So Haggerty, Johnson, McGriff, both Johnsons actually, right? Both Nate and Marcus, and then Bashir. Okay, it might be able to work. He kind of hit it out the park with Marquise Noel. From Central Arkansas back in the day. He's bought into the portal. That's kind of what got him the accolades in year one there, but it might burn him here. So I think it's a big time year. I think NCAA tournament, or they might fire him.
Yeah, I think that he's under one of the hottest seats in all of college basketball, as well as Colby Dant, who does such tremendous work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And that's an interesting question. I haven't asked too much of this in the offseason. Who are some of those coaches that you take a look at in terms of a little bit of a make or break here? Because I think Jerome Tang is perfect. I think that he is number one with that regard, but also look at a guy like a Shaheen Holloway with Seton Hall, because I feel like Seton Hall could have expected to take a step back, but what we saw last year was just absolutely terrible out of them. I think that they need to get a little bit more out of him. And how do you take a look at just some of these coaches that might be under a little bit of a hot seat? Because we know in this day and age, you're not going to be able to get that full recruiting cycle. You're going to be needing to put up a little bit more instant results than back in the day. Just ask Tobin Anderson.
I was surprised. I was really surprised with
that. I was too. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I did not see that one coming, but because we started off this episode where I hinted at, them paying the players, and now it's official. I think it went official. Well, you saw because of that, I think that coaches were retained. A lot of coaches that I thought might get fired were retained because they owe that money to the players, backdated, I think, to 2018. So coaches like Bobby Hurley. The Shaheen situation is interesting because he's an alum. So they might be a little more lenient because he's an alum. And I heard that they don't have much NIL. So I don't know what to make of that one, but I can tell you the Bobby Hurley one was a bit shocking. The Boston College situation with Earl Grant too was a little, I was surprised they announced in the middle of the ACC tournament, I think, that he was coming back. Those guys, hot seat. Air Forces, Joe Scott, and I like Joe. I've interviewed him a couple years in a row. Great guy. I mean,
how he still has a job is very confusing.
Yes. I mean, that one, he's a nice guy, great guy, and I do believe he knows basketball, but you got to think this is the final run in Colorado Springs there. There's a few that, to me, came back that I thought, wow. How about, an interesting one to me was Pat Chambers at Florida Gulf Coast, because they had actually spent a little bit more than I think a lot of the programs within that conference. And he's kind of been a dud. I thought that was a good hire at the time. He's kind of been a dud. I think it's a big year for Pat Chambers at Florida Gulf Coast. I feel like I'm forgetting an obvious one. Jerome Tang, though, certainly belongs, I think, on that list. But yeah, I mean, it's a big year. And I think now that you'll be able to figure out, but you know what I'm thinking of? McMahon at LSU. McMahon at LSU. Wes Miller too, but McMahon at LSU, I think, was one that I thought they were going to can him last year. And the fact they brought McMahon back, I was a bit surprised at that. But then I thought, they're paying, they got to pay the players. So that's got to be the reasoning why they've done this. But that one certainly, I would say, he's got to be on the hot seat. I mean, he's got to make the NCAA tournament. I don't even think they'll be happy with an NIT berth or something like that. So LSU 100%. Arizona State, I don't even understand the Arizona State one. When I was a guest at the University of Arizona State last October, they had pretty much convinced me that they were a tournament team this year. I was surprised that even with that they felt like the alumni felt good about having him as their basketball coach. You know, and
he's been on the hot seat for like 6 years.
I thought like, oh, it's a big year. And like, even before the season started, Greg, they were telling me like, no, we love having Bobby Hurley as our coach. And I was like, it's not a make or break year. They didn't think so then. So I don't even think that one is that paying the players one. I think they were just happy with Bobby Hurley for whatever reasons. I don't know if he's tight with the football coach. I don't know what.
They must love going to Dayton every 3 years.
I was baffled by that.
Lovely Dayton.
100%. I mean, just another one that I'm going to throw out there. I've had him on my show before. I like him, but Steve Lavin at San Diego, I think, is on. Like, they just got a new facility. That is one.
And they're bringing in guys this year.
That's because they were so bad last year. He knows the writing's on the wall. He's got to get it done. Another one, Jim Less at UC Davis. I had heard that they were done with him if he didn't, really have a great season. They didn't. To see that he's back was a bit shocking.
How about Mike Young over at Virginia Tech? That last year was terrible.
That's one I'm forgetting. That is one 100%. And I like Mike Young. I think he's a good mid-major coach, but he's trying to run a mid-major program at a power school, which I disagree with the approach. I really think he should have been fired last year. I like him. I was shocked Virginia Tech didn't fire him. You know what might have saved him was the fact that they might have to fire their football coach. If they're going to buy out of that contract, Brent Pry, their football coach, is on the hot seats. You got to pick and choose your battles. I think they care a little bit more about football there. But how about Adrian Autry, too, at Syracuse? That's another one. I know he has some big recruits coming in. That probably saved him over the actual money that they had to play or that they're going to have to pay. But that's one where I think he's got to make the NCAA tournament. He's got to give fans a reason, because it was a weird hire from the start, in my opinion. Just because he was a former player, it just, you forced out Boeheim too. It was just weird to me. So I'm going to throw that one in that same bin as well. Those are, I think we've covered majority of them. I could be forgetting one or two, but I think we've covered majority of them right there. That it is a gigantic year for all of those coaches. Didn't they extend Dawkins at UCF?
I think so, but that's another one that I think is interesting.
That's one that I was surprised I think they extended him like in the past year, where I was like, wow, I thought he was on the hot seat. That's another one that I think UCF might change their opinion if they have a bad season and say it's time to go. You've seen that before. I'll even throw in, I'm curious about Herb Sendek at Santa Clara.
Yeah, they've been an interesting team here. Let me throw this one in there. Archie Miller over at Rhode Island. He has to get the job done this year.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, they went, especially like the amount of juice they had behind that hiring of like this, we got our guy.
And they started off really good last year, and they went straight down the toilet bowl.
The way they lost in some of their games, we cap every game and we're on top of this, but man, they made me look like a fool a couple times last year by saying, this is Rhode Island. They're going to get this thing done. No, they lose by 20 to a team they probably had no business losing to. But he certainly is another one that I would say, yeah, you got to win. You got to put up or shut up. There's probably a couple others like in the mid-major ranks that I'm forgetting that are probably having, it's probably going to be a big year for those coaches. Let me ask you one that I know he's got the lifetime contract, but what do you feel about Bill Self?
Yeah, he's not going to get fired this year, but it's really underwhelming what we've seen out of the transfer portal from them. And out of the NBA draft winners and losers, they were some of the losers because Duke Soloway won their International Men of Mystery. And right now I'm looking at this roster, and yeah, Melvin Council's a nice player, but is he a Kansas-level player? You swung and missed on A.J. Storr last year. You no longer have Hunter Dickinson. Like, you have a few good freshmen coming in, and you've got Fleury, who's going to be back in the fold. But I look at this Kansas team, and I've got question marks for them this year.
100%. And look, last year, not this past season, the year prior, at the end of the season, I had called on my podcast that I said, I think it was even in the middle of the season, 2 seasons ago, I called for Tony Bennett to resign. And it didn't happen after the season right away. It happened right before the season started. But I was right. It took a while for it to come to come out. And I kind of get similar vibes with Bill Self. Is like he's got some health issues that he's battling over the past couple of years. I've heard rumors about personal life with family matters. But then you add in the fact that like this is Kansas. Like, I know he has a lifetime contract. I've heard that before. I know he's not having losing seasons, but he's not doing what the program normally does. I just wonder if they force it out and say, well, health problems. I just have a bad taste about the past couple years and even some of the things he said in press conferences regarding things. I know he 2 years ago he was talking about, well, we whiffed in the portal and we'll fix that. Well, you tried to fix that last year. You didn't. And he called out like the players' work ethics. And it seems like a guy who almost doesn't want to be there, but he's just under contract making a lot of money. I don't know. I just think that's one to watch out for. And I don't think he'll be fired. I think they would probably do some type of thing where forced into retirement, which is fired. But for PR's sake, I don't know that they'll say that. But it's one to watch out for because I just don't get a good vibe out of Lawrence, Kansas over the past 3 years.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's going to be a really interesting year for them because, again, he has said after the 2024 NCAA tournament that midway through the season, he was looking forward to the 2024-25 season. And in the 2024-25 season, he loses in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So much for that foresight. So I am right there with you. And Kobe, I know you're doing a tremendous job looking forward to what we're going to be getting this next college basketball season. You're having your finger on the pulse of a little bit of everything, and I know you and Ryan McIntyre are doing such an excellent job covering the sport that we all know and love. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, first off, thank you, Greg. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to hop on and talk, and we didn't even mention Damon Stoudemire. I'm on Twitter at @TheColbyD. The College Basketball Experience is on Twitter at TCE on SGPN. And look, we talk, YouTube.com/The College Experience. We go live. There's visual. We do slide. You'll see a visual matchup for every game and all the coaching in the offseason. We have a lot of coach interviews. We had Will Wade on the show. We'll just have a bunch of coaches come on the show and talk about their programs and what's going good and what they're looking forward to in the upcoming season. And also college football and college baseball right now is rolling. So all of those come together, youtube.com/The College Experience. Greg, always a pleasure, brother. And I appreciate you, man.
Always great to be able to get Kobe aboard. He does such an excellent job taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. And every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So big thanks to Kobe for joining me on Coach Soup. It's now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Coming next, let's recap the weekend news and notes that we saw in college basketball.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Colby Dant. He does such an amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So big thanks, Colby, for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the weekend, and Desmond Claude, in my opinion, might have been the biggest name still out there in the transfer portal last season over at USC. 15.8 points, a little bit over 4 assists per game. Not necessarily a great three-point shooter, only shot about 30.5% from three, but certainly a guy that was able to make a big impact over at USC. Well, he's going to be teaming up with Wesley Yates, one of his teammates from USC, over at Washington. He signs with them, and I'm starting to feel pretty bullish about this Washington team. Do I think that they're going to be like some sort of a top 10 team or anything like that? No, but in a Big Ten where I think that there's going to be a big giant middle, because there's always a big giant middle out there in the Big Ten, this is a good place to start. You've got Jacob Odasevich, who's going to be coming on over from Lipscomb, where he was a darn near 20-point per game scorer. Kamari Peterson, great name. He comes on over from ETSU. Zoom Diallo, not necessarily a guy that's going to light you up, but he's a guy that's able to outrun the point. Now you've got Desmond Claude in that backcourt as well. Have a little bit of question mark as to what you're going to be able to get out of Lathon Somerville along front and Kepadog down low, but I mean, this is a really good place to start. Danny Sprinkle, we've seen what he's been able to do over at Utah State. We saw what he was able to do at Montana State. I feel like you're number one over at Washington. It's unfair to really pin that on him, as he just didn't have a lot in general other than great Osabor, so I think that this is going to be rock solid, and I do like what they are doing over there, and I do like this pickup as well as we got Yusan Toomey. He was over at Seton Hall last season. 2 seasons ago was pretty rock solid when he was over at Evansville. Seton Hall last year was just a big giant mess, but he's decided that he is going to be going to Hawaii, and Hawaii staying very true to sort of what they are. A very much defense-oriented team. They're not going to probably light you up from three-point range or anything like that, but this is a solid ad. With Toomey over at Seton Hall last year, about 4 points, 3 rebounds per game. If you flip back to when he was over at Evansville 2 seasons ago, 10.5 points, 6.5 boards. He was able to dole out the ball a little bit as well, with about like an assist and a half per contest as well. Not a guy that's really going to try to light you up from three. He's attempted some threes in his career, but he's about a 25% three-point shooter, so you're not going to be able to expect a lot of that. But for the Rainbow Warriors, I do think that this is a nice pickup for them, as they always seem to have relatively good post play. Like Tanner Christensen last season was pretty rock solid for them. They were really missing that from this roster, which they're going to be looking to a lot of Keandre 3000 Bullock to be able to give them some versatility at 6'6". He was over at South Dakota last season, nice double-figure scorer. Tanner Cuff is also going to be entering into the program as well. He's another guy that comes on over from Evansville. He was a good scorer from them, so you've got these two guys that have been able to play with one another. I think that for Hawaii, probably going to be falling a little bit short out there in the Big West. I'm going to call it what it is, but still, I do think that this is a very nice pickup, and I do think that that is going to help them be able to maintain their good defense. You've got Onar Milak deciding that he is going to be withdrawing from the transfer portal. He last season was over at Morehead State, and he was a rock solid scorer for them. About 6.5 points, 4 rebounds per game. He started most of their games. This is not necessarily going to be some needle mover where Morehead State is now going to be number one in the conference or anything like that, but you know what? Having a guy that is 6'8" that's able to clog things up down low for a Morehead State team that is one of the slower teams in all of college basketball, I think that this is a very good ad for them. Just being able to have that chemistry, having that camaraderie, I think is very big. And then you did see another guy decide that he was going to be withdrawing from the transfer portal as well in Ashton Williamson. He was over at Florida International last season. He was averaging for the team 7.5 points, about a steal and a half per contest, 2.5 assists per game. As we know, Florida International, this is one of the best teams in all of college basketball at generating turnovers. Now, they were one of the worst teams at being able to pop in and lock it from three-point range, and Williamson being a 33% three-point shooter was actually relatively rock solid for them, and they're going to need him to be able to step up because Florida International just feels like year in and year out, they have that one go-to guy. Last year was Jaden Brewer, was able to give them 14.5 points per contest, 5 boards, threw in there a little bit over a steal per contest. With Mr. Williamson, he was a part-time starter for them, so he was able to emerge a little bit more towards back half of the season when he was able to get some starts in conference play, shot 36% from three-point range, and he became the main facilitator for the team in the back half of the season as well. So I think that that is very big for Florida International. And with regards to the news and notes in college basketball, a little bit less on the weekend, but still had some pretty good ones. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, the me does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And a big thanks once again to Colby Dant of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network for joining me in my segment. Coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.